Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we'll be delving into the complex world of railway ticketing. I say complex, but what I really mean is complicated, confusing, and frustrating. I mean, who hasn't spent time pondering over the multitude of options thrust upon us when buying a rail ticket and mulled over the permutations and consequences of advanced, off-peak, super off-peak, day return, open return? The list is endless. Why is buying a rail ticket so blooming difficult? Well, thankfully, the Rail Industry Association has pondered that question. In fact, its new report, Destination Revenue Growth, highlights research finding that complexity proved to be the biggest issue in train travel, with a fifth of travellers unable to find the cheapest ticket for their journey and 58% believing there's simply too many ticket options. It's an issue that the rail sector has to tackle if it's going to both entice more customers onto the railway and collect more revenue along the way. Not least given that the future, well, the present actually is one of digital no ticketing. I mean, the digital world is already transforming ticketing in every part of the transport and service sector, and frankly, rail has to get on board, and fast. But how? Well, joining me on the podcast today is Milda Manomaityte, Innovation Director at the Railway Industry Association and co-author of this report. So I suppose, having been immersed in this knotty issue for quite some time, she should know the answer. So let's hear. Milda, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Anthony. I'm very happy to talk about this complex issue with you today.
Well, complex and frustrating. And Destination Revenue examines the UK Rail's current ticketing and retail offer. It's a mess, right? But in short, for you, where are the gaps between government's aspirations, policy, and the implementation? How do you see it?
The way we see it is we start looking from the view of a passenger. We all are passengers, and in one way, you think about this is such an easy problem to solve because we all know what we want to have in our experience in every day. We want to have a seamless journey, information when things happen, when things don't happen, to be informed. We want to buy our ticket for any device we can, whether it would be mobile, website, or from a person. We want to have a consistent price, whatever we buy this. We want to trust that whatever we're buying will, as you mentioned earlier, will cover our journey, is the right ticket, and is the best value. Mm-hmm. And these are the gaps that we still see is that in between changing transport modes, changing train operators, buying tickets from different devices or different places, and trusting in the system and getting consistent customer service. Yeah.
Well, as you say, the key is raising customer experience, and boosting ridership, to drive this all-important revenue growth, without increasing ticket prices, hopefully, although given that ticket prices went up recently, they seem to be continually doing that. So I suppose the question is it a realistic aspiration to actually try to revolutionise or create some evolution in this ticketing system without completely dismantling the current privatised franchise system?
It is a complex issue, and there are ways we can tackle this without, as you say, starting from scratch. And we are not the only sector that has that problem. Airline is a very complex ticketing system, and so if we don't get our own house in order, how we will integrate with other transport modes. So we represent the supply chain, people who innovate and create ticketing solutions, and there's already quite a lot of suggestions and solutions out there where we could, like QR code, for example. This didn't need a revolution, but already changed the way we buy and present tickets. So you don't have to print it, you don't have to do all of these complex things. So there are solutions available that would make this life easier. However, we need a decision on these.
Well, I love the QR code. I buy my tickets via Trainline or other ticket providers are available, I'm sure, but and you know that you've got your QR code, and it gets you through the gate, it gets you through it works really well as long as you understand which ticket you're buying, of course, to start with. And I suppose the prize of getting this right is there. I mean, your research says that the right customer offering, people like me, making me able, making it possible for me to buy the right ticket, it could contribute to growth in passenger numbers between 37 and 97% by 2050. A doubling. I mean, is there the capacity on the railway to cope with that kind of increase?
So capacity is an interesting question, and that's where we always, as an industry body for the sector, advocate for maintaining and increasing that capacity. There is something that we can do within the existing network, within optimizing peak and off-peak times, making sure there's enough people and flexibility for those people to choose when to travel and how to configure trains. So there is something that we can do now. However, if we are seeing the most optimistic number growth of 97%, we absolutely need more capacity on the network.
Now, you may have heard recently Rory Sutherland on the podcast talking about his frustrations with the rail sector and how simple ideas such as incentivising rather than penalising passengers onto earlier trains. I mean, for instance, if you buy an advance ticket, you are locked into that time. And if you want to change it, it's going to cost you big. I mean, do you see any quick wins around that kind of problem?
The quick win would be ensuring the passenger information systems are in order, so you know exactly what is happening with your journey and ability to adapt to those changes, whether your plans change or whether the railway system has changed. There are solutions that are being trialed at the moment with LNER and other train operators or transport bodies that potentially could lead to those quick wins.
Yeah, I mean, he also talks about the need to value comfort and convenience and predictability over speed. That could radically change the ridership, etc. We have the Shapps-Williams plan for rail, and that itself identifies the ticketing problem, and it calls for more vertical integration, trying to actually bring those operators closer to the management of the rail system. I mean, what's the problem with their plan?
Well, the problem with the plan is it's not happening. It's great to have a plan, and this is what we're always asking, whether it's ticketing or infrastructure or rolling stock. We need a stable national vision. But it's not enough to have a vision. We need to make sure that that vision is getting implemented, because in our report, we've examined, since the announcement of the William Shapps plan for rail, and specifically plans for ticketing, what decisions and how those promises have been progressed. And what we found, there was a lot of U-turns, a lot of things. We will do this, and then we will not do this. We will make this, we will not do this. So this creates so much insecurity and confusion in the sector for passengers, but also suppliers as well, that it will not in any way be helpful to reform the ticketing system.
You flag up in the report that TfL, Transport for London, is a model to follow. It's able to offer an integrated model with a single ticketing system across a multimodal network. And Manchester's following that with its B network. I mean, these are both urban, I suppose, interurban solutions. Do you see that being possible on an intercity basis?
It's a battle of two systems, the way I see it. It's the pay-as-you-go, so you tap in, tap out, and at the end of the day, you get charged something, you trust the system. The same is happening in London. And there is the account-based ticketing solution, where you, a bit like you book Uber travel, so you know in advance how you're going to travel, how much that will cost, and it links to your account, and you can look back at all of these, your journeys. So these systems, they work for specific areas. Pay-as-you-go, really good for urban, dense areas, for shorter journeys. Account-based system, more for longer journeys. How these two work together, this is something that our members, the suppliers who develop solution, can find a way. There is a way. It's just, as I said, it needs to link to that a decision of this is what we want to go, and we'll do it.
Yeah. Okay. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of your recommendations from the report, let's talk a bit about the Railway Industry Association. What is it, in case anyone doesn't know, and what does it do?
We're a trade body or a membership organization for UK railway suppliers. So all of those creators and technology providers and Anybody from infrastructure to trains to ticketing solutions, we like to say if you would like to plan and build a railway from scratch, our members, the companies within the membership, could do that.
Right.
So we're working with the infrastructure organizations like Network Rail, but our members are the suppliers.
Yeah, so it's a complex ecosystem. I mean, who do you act for? Who pays for you to be in existence?
It's our members, so we're a non-profit organization supported by membership fees and events and marketing activities for our events, for our members. But we act for and on behalf of the railway supply chain. The one thing that we always do, and it's almost like we start every meeting with that, does what we do benefit the railway sector or the railway supply chain? If it doesn't, we don't do it.
Right. And presumably that means the consequence of that is that you benefit the passenger as well, because it's a complex relationship between who is the customer and who is the provider of the service. I mean, you understand that kind of that relationship between the passenger and the rest of the rail industry.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's very easy to forget when you, in your day-to-day, you need to grow your business, you need to make sure you deliver, to forget what it's all about. And railway is a public service. It is for the passengers, for people to travel. It's a transport mode that connects to other modes. So we need to not forget that. And
when it works, it's brilliant. And when it doesn't, it's very, very frustrating. Unpacking destination revenue growth, your new report. Let's focus on it. It makes 4 key asks to help plan for a better future. The first one, and you touched on it earlier, is this stable national vision. Without it, you say it's impossible to implement long-term policy. I mean, where does this vision come from, and what's stopping it at the moment?
We do need a vision from the central government. It doesn't have to be a solution-based vision. It needs to be something we can find different solutions, but go to the same destination. If the vision is we need a seamlessly integrated passenger experience for passenger information, ticketing, retail, the supply chain, the clients, the train operating companies, they will work together to find a way to do it. Once that vision is set, it needs to not be influenced by political climates, change of governments, change of mood. It needs to be stable. That's why we're asking. It's not just the vision. It's that stability and insurance that it will continue and we can work towards it.
I mean, that sounds like a very big ask. A rail policy which isn't going to change.
We don't see it as a big ask. It needs a little bit of bravery, and we see that in a lot of decisions. So to say, this is what we want to do for the passengers, for us, and we commit to it and we'll stick by it. Okay. But we will work with all of the stakeholders to deliver that vision. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk a bit more about the politics of rail a bit later on. But the second issue the second ask that your report says is around standardized and specified interfaces, interfaces between different ticketing ecosystems. And I mentioned earlier that the way that TfL has actually managed to integrate its buses and its trains and its tubes, etc. Is this cultural? Is this structural, or is this a technological problem that we're dealing with here?
It's not a technological problem. Technology exists, and in various variations. It is probably a cultural issue where we need. So there's a lot of good, interesting solutions are being developed right now. Interesting pilots and sort of pockets of innovation happening. However, what the fear is that once these will grow and the same way as the London Oyster network is expanding, once these different networks will expand, the passenger, again, if they don't talk together, these systems, the passenger will lose, because they will need to have one card for one zone of traveling, another card, or even the same card but a different account for another zone. So whatever is happening, and it doesn't have to be a big central government standard, but it needs that collaborative approach and say, whatever we're doing, hey, I am here a transport authority or a transport body, I'm developing the system for my passengers. but I need to make sure that it works with the others.
Yeah. I mean, because I find it an incredibly useful in as I travel around London. That you know that when you travel on a tube or a train or a bus all on the same day, you get a reconciled payment at the end of the day, which gives you the best price. And I suppose it works incredibly well, and I suppose I look at it and think, well, why can't that be rolled out in the rest of the rest of the system?
Well, this is where the complexity of systems come into play, and there's contracts and reconciliation of payments and different stakeholders. It's possible to fix it, but it does require this very, very open and a grown-up conversation to say, hey, this is, and coming back to the vision, this is what we want to achieve. We have to work together to achieve it.
Well, no pressure, Milda. Can you get on with that, please? Because it needs to happen. The third is the need for a level playing field. A level playing field for all, including access to core data, fares, and features. And I think that's one of the points you're inferring in the last answer is it's trying to get this interoperability between everyone that's involved in this vast ecosystem. I mean, who do you see administering, or managing this change?
Well, this could be a role for Great British Railways. And again, I'll keep coming back to our first ask because there is a reason why it's the first one of that vision. But currently, if you buy a ticket from a third-party retailer or directly from a train operating company, you will have access to different types of tickets, even though there's so many ticket types. But that
you've noticed that, have you? Yeah.
Once or twice. But that does not help build that trust with the passenger. And even if sometimes if you buy the ticket from a different device, you will get a different fare. And this is not fair. The pun was intended.
No, but it's not fair. But it is also it's a distraction, and it makes people say, I don't know what I'm supposed to be paying. I don't know. I'll use a car, and that's the ultimate thing. It discourages people from using the railways.
That is a loss for us.
Yeah. The final thing that you seek, and maybe that's also linked, is common contractual frameworks. You describe as multimodal common contractual frameworks need to be established, but not mandated. Who does this? Who's going to be actually enacting these common contractual frameworks? And how does it differ from what's being called for in the Plan for Rail?
This was one of the most difficult asks for us to nail down, and because of these complex questions that you're asking. But the idea behind it is, and it also comes from my earlier experience working with with airports and railways, trying to figure out how to do an integrated airline railway ticket. And one of the biggest issues is around those contracts between these different operators. So if you buy a flight ticket and a railway ticket and something goes wrong, for example, your train gets delayed, so you miss a flight, the airline ticket is much more expensive. Who does bear the responsibility? How does the passenger get compensated? What's the process behind all of that? And I don't know a full answer for this ask yet, but the idea is that if you do have these agreements in place, or the process is how you fix that problem, then it will be much easier to invest in multimodal ticketing solutions.
Right. Because I suppose when things go wrong, most rail companies now have got a delay repay scheme of some kind. I suppose what the passenger doesn't really want to do is have to work out why the delay happened. It happened to them, so they want some compensation. And I suppose what you're trying to get is some kind of commonality, so that it's easier for train companies to make that repayment.
Absolutely, and it's also easy for passenger to understand what happens if. And because that's one of the biggest barriers of people not traveling. It's like, I do not trust that if I do buy an integrated ticket, if what happens if I miss a train? What happens if I miss a flight? What happens if my bus is delayed? Who do I go to? And having a very clear information to the passenger, but also within the back system between the operators, it will make our travel easier.
I mean, you could argue that making the trains run on time and so there weren't delays and so you didn't have to, to claim compensation would be a better place to start. But I suppose bringing the whole thing into that whole ecosystem is great. Let's talk a bit about you, Milda. I met you last when you were launching the association's Data and Digital Rail Report. And we'll perhaps talk a bit more about that later on. But you trained as a journalist from Lithuania originally, I think where you were from. And you worked in and around the transport communications sector since, but found your way into the rail sector around 7 years ago. What is it about rail then that fires your passions?
I enjoy the whole transport system. As you say, I've started as a transport journalist, and the idea that you work in a sector that affects every single person is really appealing to me. Whether it's logistics and thinking about how your parcels or things that you consume come to be at your house, or how you go and meet your friends or commute to your office, I find it meaningful work. Yeah. So transport is an interesting sector to be in.
Well, certainly it's one that most people got a view on. Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Absolutely.
A few rail questions for you. What's your most frequent rail journey?
Currently, it's the Victoria line, my commute. I do actually go to the office almost every day of the week. So Victoria line is my most used line at the moment.
Does that make it your favourite rail journey?
Perhaps not. Perhaps not. I think my favorite rail journey so far was actually in Switzerland. I spent 2 weeks traveling in Switzerland. We had a Swiss pass, traveling between different mountain regions and just being on those panoramic trains and seeing the beautiful landscapes going by. And actually, it was very pleasant experience. And one day we spent 8 hours changing trains, 5 trains, 8 hours. It was one of the best days of the holiday.
Fantastic. No, I imagine that they were all on time as well. Or maybe not, I don't know. What's your worst ticket buying experience?
The one that comes to mind is probably in Birmingham. And the reason I was at one of the railway events at the NEC, the National Exhibition Centre, and needed to go from Birmingham to International to Birmingham City Centre. And I just wanted to buy a quick ticket. I was at the station. I was like, I'll just get it from the ticket machine. I couldn't understand what I was doing. And the frustration there for me was, I am in the industry.
Right.
I should know how to do this thing. I got so frustrated, and I was looking for a person. I think I ended up buying it on my phone through one of the apps, but it didn't need to be frustrating. And then it really hit home to me that for a person who is not in the sector and doesn't use the railways frequently, that must be absolutely infuriating.
Yeah, I imagine that, for somebody who is not native to the UK, it must be incredibly infuriating as well. Let's finish on a high on these questions. So, what's the best thing about UK travel on the UK rail system?
It exists. I come from Lithuania, and I've been living in UK for quite a long time, 16, I think, years. So the situation has changed a little bit, but in Lithuania, passenger travel on railways was not popular. It's more a freight network. But the ability to go anywhere more or less you want without needing to drive is amazing. I really love that. I couldn't leave my car in Lithuania. I was saying to my colleagues the other day, I didn't even walk in Lithuania. You just drive everywhere. Yeah. And actually the ability to take the train, read a book, do your thing, and end up somewhere where you need to be is amazing.
You mentioned it earlier, but before getting exclusively into rail, you founded the Global Air Rail Alliance. So what is that? Why was it needed and what happened to it?
So Global Air Rail Alliance was another membership organization that I founded, and it was looking at rail connections to airports, specifically around customer experience and ticketing. And the organization was global, as the clue is in the name. I worked with companies like KL Express in Kuala Lumpur, or sort of airport expresses around the world. And it was really fascinating to understand how passengers use these services and what it is needed to take these passengers from taxis and Ubers and their own cars and use rail to go to the airport. So it was quite a fun thing to do. I did it for about 8 years, and just before pandemic, the situation was a bit difficult. So I was looking for new opportunities, and RIA has welcomed me with open arms.
Very, very good. Well, before that, you were editor of Customer Experience magazine, which I imagine taught you quite a lot about the work you do right now.
Absolutely. I think the biggest lesson from that time in my life was there was a lot of articles that I edited about handling complaints and how you need to embrace, if a customer is complaining, they're giving you an opportunity to do better.
Right.
So it really changed my mindset about, there's another customer complaint to, that person bothered to tell me, so they want me to do better. So it was an interesting change of mindset.
What do you do when you're not at work then?
Well, I either am outdoors, hiking, cycling, or doing something like this, or I am indoors doing creative stuff. So I do a lot of crochet.
Oh, right. And
this year I'm learning how to sew my own outfits because I need that in my life.
And it's a resurging hobby and pastime, so I understand.
I've heard somewhere recently that it's a millennials' midlife crisis doing craft and hobbies, so I'm firmly there.
Well, you carry on. Let's talk about the future of rail then. I mentioned the Data and Digital Report, which you launched a year or so ago. It set out 6 asks of government, policymakers and clients aimed at accelerating the success of the UK's digital transition. Why would you say that this digital transition will redefine the way the network is operated and maintained?
There's a lot of aspects around it. We're currently in the middle of our RIA's Digital Decade campaign that looks at 3 things. One is digital signaling. So this is your traffic lights for trains and how that will change. We can make sure the trains are better optimized and the timetables are better. Data and digital AI. So that's, data and AI. Artificial intelligence, and this aspect of digital world will change everything. It's changing everything in our own day-to-day lives, but also how the railways will be maintained, operated. There's huge places where you can optimize your operations. And the third pillar is the rail and retail segment, which is why we launched this report.
Clearly you make the point that digitalization will continue to impact ticketing. I mean, I see how it's going to boost efficiency and really give people better access to those tickets. But how do you see it impacting revenue growth?
Well, first of all, paper tickets cost a lot of money. We do have to be careful around this. There's a whole conversation about making sure we don't exclude people who do not access to digital technologies. That's a whole different conversation, and we are aware of it. But just preventing fraud, optimizing your operations, investing in technology, making sure your staff are better trained and can actually be there more for customers rather than just kind of doing the ticket selling jobs. There's a lot of ways where the digital ticketing will improve the operation side of the railways.
Right, so it's not just about reducing the cost, taking away ticket offices. It's actually helping people to buy more tickets and get better value from those. Because people do have a strange relationship with ticketing. I mean, I use Trainline, as I said. Other apps are available. But a surprising number of people still like to buy paper tickets from a ticket office. We saw the backlash from the decision or the attempt to remove them. I mean, how do you see that going on in future? Do you see less people wanting tickets, or how do you see it?
I see this as a lack of trust in the system at the moment. If you're not used to searching for a ticket online or through apps, you would still think that the person in the ticket in the station will give you the best value and will actually answer all your questions, will build that trust for you.
And normally they do.
And normally
they do. To be fair, yeah.
And this is where we need to make sure that whatever we do with the digital technologies can help answer those questions and be as transparent as you can and easy to use. And we still need humans. We're social beings. We want to talk to people. And previous my experience in Birmingham International Station, I also looked for a human when I got really frustrated. So we always will need, but making sure that we can use the digital technologies and actually leave the people to interact and help other people, that's where I see it going.
No, well, I did have a hilarious time the other day with a ticket inspector on a train where we were both trying to work out what exactly super off-peak was and whether my ticket was valid. It is a struggle. It's reducing that complexity, which is the key thing. Finally, let's talk about the politics of rail, because I think at the association, you are here in Westminster, rail is hugely political. We're in a general election year. Are there, or where are the party dividing lines when it comes to rail? Are there any?
Well, we're, as a trade body, advocating for the railway sector. We work with anybody who is in power, making sure the way we see our role is to make sure the railway sector is understood in not in just simple terms, but in human terms. So what does that mean for you and your policies? What does that mean for your goals? How can we support it? We're ready to see what comes next and prepared to work with whatever government it is.
So if I was to ask you, if you were passionate about the railways, who should you vote for?
That is a tricky question. Well, vote for whoever you think will deliver the best value for you and your transport system.
Okay, so I'm not going to tempt you into going down any particular route there. But do you think any politician of any colour has the expertise, the interest, the stamina that it takes to really deliver rail reform?
It is. We keep saying it's a complicated sector, and it would be unfair to ask for the policymakers to know all the ins and outs of the sector. And that's why it's so important to work with organizations like ourselves, or talk to our suppliers or people who operate and maintain the railways. That dialogue and collaboration is one of our other big asks. We always want to say, just engage with us. We will help you navigate these waters.
Yeah, and they are quite turbulent. I mean, we've got the draft rail reform bill. It's likely to grind on for some time. Yeah, I mean, do you see any quick wins? Where do you see that bill going?
Well, the quick win would be to pass the bill. It's not a huge bill. It's ready to go. We see this. We see this as a quick win. On the other hand, if I go back to the ticketing side of things, there has been a lot of dialogue that the ticketing reform does not need railway reform. And this is where we can start making the difference.
All right. So finally, then, how are you feeling about the future of rail ticketing? I mean, I set it out at the start as being a complete mess. It's frustrating. It's a distraction, and it's a disincentive to people using the railways. Do you see any light at the end of this tunnel of reform, or are we like to remain confused for some time yet?
I am very optimistic about the ticketing sector, but also transport sector. The users are getting louder. It will be driven by the demand from the users to have a good experience, and I see that there's a lot of interesting people and passionate people working in the sector to deliver the solutions. It's looking good. We just need to, be patient for a little while. Great.
No, well, the report. I'll put a link in the show notes to the report on rail ticketing from the RIA. So do have a look at that. Certainly, there's a lot of information in there, and there's certainly a lot of real big challenges. So, Milda, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's a very interesting topic, a really important topic for anyone that uses the railway. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Well, look, Milda, thanks a lot. That's all we've got time for today, though. And I do hope that you do manage to solve this ticketing problem. But meanwhile, we've got more from the Infrastructure Podcast in the pipeline and more guests to talk to as we continue to probe the big issues faced across the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you find background information to all the issues discussed today and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share. So thanks for joining us. Thanks again to Milda, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.